What if you have ADHD and you feel like you've done everything right? Maybe you've tried medication, cleaned up your diet, worked on your routines, but your focus still feels inconsistent. This video is for you. There are three nutrient deficiencies I see over and over again in patients with ADHD that quietly make everything worse. They make you feel more tired, more foggy, more irritable, and most doctors never check them. Today, I'm going to walk you through what those three nutrients are, why they matter so much for the ADHD brain, what symptoms they cause, and which lab ranges I'm actually aiming for with my patients. When we talk about ADHD, we tend to zoom in on dopamine, norepinephrine, and the frontal lobe. Those are all real, but here's what often gets missed. Your brain can't make or use those neurotransmitters properly if it doesn't have the basic raw materials that it needs. In conventional medicine, the typical ADHD workup might include a basic physical, maybe a CBC, maybe a thyroid test, and basically that's it. No ferritin, no omega-3 index, no zinc copper workup. In my practice, when we look under the hood and actually address these deficiencies, patients will often say something like, "Now my ADHD meds feel like they actually work." Or, "For the first time, I can focus without feeling completely drained afterward." So let's start with the first one, iron. Most people think of iron only in terms of anemia. So conventional medicine will often run a CBC, hemoglobin, hematocrit, and if those look normal, they say your iron is fine. The problem is you can have normal hemoglobin and still have very low ferritin. Ferritin is your iron storage protein. Think of it as your iron tank. It tells us how much iron is actually available to the body and the brain over time. It's a much more accurate reflection of iron status than serum iron, which can spike or drop depending on what you ate that day or whether you've taken an iron supplement in the last 24 hours. So you can have a normal CBC, normal serum iron, and ferritin that's quietly sitting in the basement. That's the pattern I see all the time in patients with ADHD, especially kids, teens, and menstruating women. So why does this matter so much for ADHD? Because iron is critical for dopamine synthesis. The dopamine pathway simplified looks like this. Your body uses the amino acid tyrosine as the starting material. An enzyme called tyrosine hydroxylase converts tyrosine into L-DOPA. Then L-DOPA is converted into dopamine. Iron is a necessary cofactor for tyrosine hydroxylase. If you don't have enough iron on board, that enzyme doesn't work efficiently. And if that step slows down, you simply don't make dopamine at the rate that your brain is asking for it. So low ferritin is not just about being tired or pale, it's about your brain literally struggling to manufacture the neurotransmitters that support focus, motivation, and mood. On top of that, iron is essential for carrying oxygen throughout your bloodstream. Hemoglobin relies on iron to deliver oxygen to your tissues, including your brain. So when your iron status is low, you can see brain fog, fatigue, low exercise tolerance, dizziness on standing, hair shedding, easy bruising, and in some people, shortness of breath with exertion. Now, there's an important nuance here. Ferritin is also what's called an acute phase reactant. That means it can go up in response to inflammation, infection, or liver issues. So a high ferritin doesn't always mean that your iron stores are adequate. It might just mean that your body is inflamed. So when I look at ferritin, I'm not just asking, is it in the lab's normal range? I'm asking, is this ferritin too low to support healthy dopamine production and oxygen delivery? Or is it falsely elevated because of inflammation? For most people, I'm aiming for a ferritin around 70 to 100. That tends to be the sweet spot where the brain has enough iron to run dopamine production and energy metabolism efficiently without pushing into excessive territory. If your ferritin is, say, 12 or 18 and your doctor told you it's fine and you're not anemic, that's technically true by their criteria, but it's probably not fine for your brain. The second deficiency is low omega-3 status, which I usually assess with an omega-3 index. Omega-3 fats, specifically EPA and DHA, are built into the cell membranes of your brain cells. They keep those membranes fluid and flexible, which directly affects how neurons communicate with each other. DHA supports the structure of neurons and synapses. EPA is especially important for modulating inflammation, including in the brain. When omega-3s are low, people often experience more brain fog, more irritability and emotional reactivity, lower mood, and more difficulty sustaining attention. Now, add in our modern diet. Most people eat very little wild caught fatty fish and a lot of highly processed foods and seed oils. That pushes us towards low omega 3 and high omega 6, which is more pro inflammatory. So it's not surprising that when we test, we almost never see an ADHD brain that's truly optimized here. The test I like is the omega 3 index, which measures the EPA and DHA content of your red blood cell membranes and reports it as a percentage. Based on the research, we can roughly break it down like this. Below 4% is a high risk zone, 4 to 8% is intermediate, and above 8% is the optimal range. And many experts now talk about 8 to 12% as a target window for better heart, brain, and eye health. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people, including patients with ADHD, are very well below 8%, and many are under 4%. So when I'm working with ADHD, I'm not just asking, are you eating healthy? I'm asking, what does your omega 3 index actually look like? Now, a quick but important point about supplementation. Omega 3 fats are very fragile. They oxidize easily, meaning they can go rancid and form damaging byproducts if they're not processed or stored carefully. So if you're going to supplement, choose a high quality fish oil that's third party tested for purity and for oxidation. Avoid bottles that smell intensely fishy or off. A slight smell can be normal, but a strong rancid odor is a red flag. Store it as directed, often in a cool, dark place, sometimes in the fridge. The goal isn't just to take fish oil, it's to actually move your omega 3 index into that 8 to 12% range over time. When we do that, people often describe their brain as feeling clearer, calmer, less inflamed, and more capable of sustained attention. The third deficiency, or more accurately, imbalance that I see all the time is in zinc and copper. Zinc is involved in hundreds of enzymatic reactions in the body. It's critical for immune function, wound healing, hormone production, and importantly for ADHD, neurotransmitter metabolism, including dopamine and serotonin. Copper is also essential. It supports energy production in the mitochondria, formation of connective tissue, and some of the enzymes involved in neurotransmitter pathways. The problem is that zinc and copper compete with each other. They share transporters in the gut and can push each other either up or down. Here's what I often see in ADHD circles. Someone hears that zinc helps dopamine or that zinc is good for ADHD, and they start taking zinc supplements, sometimes at fairly high doses, for months or even years without ever testing their zinc or copper levels. Over time, that can drive copper too low. And low copper can look like fatigue, anemia-like symptoms despite normal iron, neurological changes, connective tissue or collagen issues, and in some cases, mood changes. On the flip side, some people end up over supplementing copper or have high copper exposure from other sources, and that can suppress zinc. Low zinc can look like more frequent infections, slow wound healing, acne or skin issues, loss of taste or smell in some people, and again, more mood and focus problems because zinc supports neurotransmitter pathways. So instead of throwing zinc at every ADHD case, what I prefer to do is to test both serum or plasma zinc and serum or plasma copper. Then I look at both the individual numbers and the ratio between them. I'm generally aiming for a roughly 1-to-1 ratio, or at least a situation where zinc isn't chronically being overshadowed by high copper or vice versa. So the big message here is that zinc is important, copper is important, but balance is what the brain really cares about. So how does this all come together in an actual ADHD workup? When I'm working with someone who has ADHD, whether it's a child, teen, or adult, and especially if they're still struggling despite doing a lot of things right, I'll often include ferritin, CBC, and an iron panel, an omega 3 index, zinc and copper, and sometimes additional nutrient markers depending on the case. I'm not just looking for is anything in the red on the lab report. I'm asking, is ferritin actually high enough to support dopamine and oxygen delivery? Is the omega 3 index anywhere near that 8 to 12% range? Are zinc and copper in balance, or has one been pushed too far by untested supplementation? When we correct these, People on stimulant medications often say the meds feel smoother, less jittery, and more consistent. People who aren't on meds often notice their baseline focus, mood, and energy improve enough that everything else, including routines, therapy, or coaching, becomes much more effective. It doesn't mean nutrients replace everything else. It means we're finally giving the brain what it needs so the rest of the plan actually has the chance to work. So let's quickly recap. ADHD isn't just a dopamine problem in isolation. It's a whole brain, whole body condition that's heavily influenced by whether your brain has the raw materials that it needs. Three of the most common hidden issues that I see are low ferritin, so the brain can't make dopamine efficiently or carry oxygen well, low omega-3 index, so cell membranes and inflammatory pathways are out of balance, zinc copper imbalance, so neurotransmitter and immune function are disrupted even if no one's ever told you that your labs are abnormal. If your ADHD feels like it's not responding the way it should, it's worth asking. Have these actually been checked? And if so, were they only judged by normal range or by what's actually optimal for brain health? If you'd like to work with me one on one to run the right labs and build a personalized ADHD plan, check out the link in the description to get started.